The XL Naga established their primary command center in what once was the United Nations headquarters, a calculated insult that wasn't lost on the few remaining human diplomats permitted to serve as liaisons. The Grand General Assembly Hall had been transformed, its familiar human architecture now infused with crystalline growths that pulsed with their own internal light. Where nation flags once hung, now suspended crystalline fragments rotated slowly, tracking the movement of the sun. Captain Maya Rodriguez, now designated Security Liaison 7, stood at rigid attention as Nexus Prime conducted his weekly address. Her fighter pilot's jacket had been replaced with the gray uniform of human auxiliaries, deliberately ill-fitting, another small humiliation engineered to remind humans of their new status. Resource extraction quotas remain unfulfilled in sectors 12 through 17. Nexus Prime announced, his voice a symphony of overlapping tones that made human ears ring painfully. The simple ones continued to demonstrate inefficiency. Maya forced herself to maintain a neutral expression. 6 months ago, she would have been in the cockpit of an F-35, not standing here as a glorified translator for occupation forces. The scar tissue on her right temple, where they'd implanted and later removed a compliance node, after determining humans weren't neurologically compatible with their standard control methods, itched as it always did in the presence of the aliens. The next phase of integration requires increased energy collection. Nexus Prime continued. Behind him, a holographic display showed Earth divided into harvest grids. We will be relocating 17 million simple ones to optimize collection procedures. Relocating. Maya had seen the relocation centers, with their massive energy siphons, humans packed into dormitories, attached daily to collection apparatus that left them exhausted but curiously euphoric, a mechanism the Resistance had yet to understand. Liaison 7, you will inform your regional coordinators, Nexus Prime said, his attention suddenly focusing on Maya. His inner lights pulsed in what she had learned was an expression of authority. Resistance is down 11% since last lunar cycle. This is acceptable progress. Yes, Illuminated One. Maya responded with the mandatory honorific, swallowing her rage. What the aliens couldn't know, was that the apparent decrease in resistance was deliberate. Former General Akira Tanaka had ordered all cells to reduce visible operations while they gathered intelligence on the aliens' most closely guarded secret, the temple ships that arrived monthly, carrying additional crystalline eternal ones that were immediately sequestered in heavily protected meditation chambers. As the assembly concluded, Maya was escorted by 2 drone guards, semi-autonomous crystalline constructs that floated silently beside her, to the decontamination chamber. All humans were required to pass through these chambers before exiting Cell Naga facilities, allegedly to protect against biological contamination. She suspected the real purpose was surveillance. While enduring the customary scan, Maya's thoughts drifted to the encrypted message waiting in her designated housing unit. Before her capture and reassignment, she had been part of the classified Project Obsidian, a last-ditch research initiative studying fragments recovered from a damaged XL Naga scout ship. The message, hidden in a children's book her nephew had supposedly sent, would contain Dr. Elena Reyes' latest findings. Maya didn't know what Elena had discovered, but the emergency protocol activation suggested it was significant. Whatever it was, Maya would ensure it reached the resistance cells. Humanity needed any advantage, no matter how small, against conquerors who considered them barely more evolved than livestock. As she exited into the controlled human sector, Maya gazed upward at the massive temple ship hovering above Manhattan, its crystalline surface refracting sunlight into unnatural patterns across the cityscape. The XL Naga might consider humans powerless, but they had yet to learn humanity's most dangerous quality. We adapt. Elena's muscles burned as she scrubbed vigorously at the iridescent residue coating the floor of the meditation chamber. The substance, some kind of crystalline secretion left after communion rituals, hardened quickly upon exposure to air and required relentless pressure to remove. 3 hours into her punishment detail, Her fingernails had split and bled through the threadbare cleaning gloves. A shadow fell across her work area. The XL Naga overseer Lethbar hovered nearby, its crystalline body refracting light into sharp, painful patterns on the floor. Insufficient progress. Simple worker 11,382. It intoned, the translated voice flat and mechanical through Elena's mandatory earpiece. Extend cleaning protocols by 2 intervals. Elena kept her eyes carefully downcast. Yes, luminous one. The title tasted like ash in her mouth. As Lethvar drifted away to inspect other workers, Elena resumed scrubbing, more slowly now. The extended punishment was actually welcome. It gave her more time inside the restricted chamber. 3 weeks of deliberately minor infractions had finally earned her the specific punishment she'd been angling for. The chamber emptied as evening shift ended, other human workers filing out under XL Naga supervision. Elena continued her methodical cleaning, moving imperceptibly closer to the central days where the Eternal One would be placed during ceremonies. The cleaning detail had been calculated. If the chamber's automated sensors detected uncleaned residue, the evening communion ritual would be delayed. Elena had almost reached the days when warning tones sounded. The massive crystal doors at the chamber's far end began to open. With practiced speed, she rolled beneath an ornate crystalline bench, pressing herself into the shadows. 6XL Naga entered in formal procession, their bodies pulsing with ceremonial light patterns. 4 carried an oblong crystal specimen approximately 2 meters in length, placing it reverently on the central dais. Unlike the XL Naga's angular bodies, the Eternal One had an organic flowing structure, its interior swirling with colors Elena couldn't name. From her hiding place, Elena activated the modified data pad concealed in her sleeve. Salvage technology repurposed by resistance engineers to record frequencies beyond normal human perception. The risk was enormous. Detection meant immediate termination. The XL Naga arranged themselves in a precise geometric pattern around the crystal. Their bodies began emitting synchronized pulses of light while generating harmonic tones that made Elena's teeth vibrate painfully. The central crystal responded, its interior patterns accelerating and brightening. What happened next defied Elena's scientific understanding. The XL Naga began to shed particles of their crystalline bodies, not as waste, but as offerings. These luminous fragments floated toward the Eternal One, being absorbed into its structure. The crystal's brilliance intensified with each absorption, while the XL Naga's forms dimmed proportionally. Then the process reversed. Tendrils of energy extended from the crystal to each XL Naga, connecting to specific nodes on their bodies. The aliens went rigid, their internal lights flaring with renewed intensity. The exchange continued for precisely 19 minutes before concluding with a harmonic resonance that nearly caused Elena to cry out in pain. As the XL Naga departed, their bodies visibly more vibrant than when they'd entered, Elena remained motionless, waiting until the chamber sealed completely before retrieving her hidden datapad. The readings were unlike anything she'd seen. Energy signatures that fluctuated between familiar electromagnetic patterns and something else entirely, something that registered as both present and not present simultaneously. Later that night, in her apartment in Chicago Labor District 7, Elena analyzed the recordings with equipment hidden beneath her floorboards. The patterns aligned perfectly with every major XL Naga governance decision of the past year. Each newly announced restriction or expansion of harvesting operations preceded by exactly one communion cycle. When Marcus Chen's distinct knock pattern sounded at her door shortly before midnight, Elena had reached an inescapable conclusion. She let the resistance leader in, checking twice for surveillance drones before speaking. "I found their weakness," she whispered, displaying the analyzed data on her pad. "They're not just conquerors, they're addicts. And their gods are their dealers. Stand precisely as directed. Simple Scientist 11,382. Vorlaf commanded, towering over Elena in the sterile research chamber. The scientist priest's body pulsed with elaborate patterns that Elena had learned indicated irritation. "Yes, illuminated one," she responded, positioning herself by the monitoring equipment. After her discovery of the communion ritual, Elena's genetic profile had been flagged during routine scanning. Her background in quantum physics suddenly relevant when several Eternal Ones began showing signs of dimensional instability. The XL Naga were desperate. 3 crystalline entities had already degraded beyond recovery, their structures collapsing into inert matter. Elena had been transferred from Chicago to Research Outpost Gamma 9, formerly the CERN facility in Switzerland, to assist with analysis under Vorlath's suspicious supervision. "The next specimen arrives momentarily," Vorlath announced. "It exhibits early-stage corruption patterns. You will observe only. Touch nothing." Elena nodded compliance while mentally cataloging every detail of the specialized equipment surrounding the central containment field. Her mind raced with calculations and theories based on the communion recordings she'd smuggled to resistance physicists. Something was disrupting the aliens' precious energy exchange. An alarm blared, signaling the facility-wide quarantine drill, a weekly procedure Elena had carefully memorized. Vorlath's internal lights flickered in annoyance. "Remain here," the alien ordered. "I must verify protocol compliance. The specimen is non-interactive in its current state." With a final warning pulse, Vorlath glided from the chamber, sealing the door behind him. Elena immediately abandoned her station, rushing to the security terminal. She had exactly 4 minutes before the drill concluded, not enough time to access the classified research, but perhaps enough to. A soft thud from the ventilation shaft stopped her cold. "Mama," a small voice called out as a panel in the ceiling slid aside. Elena's heart froze. "Matteo, what are you? How did you?" Her 8-year-old son dropped lightly to the floor, his thin face smudged with dust. "The housing block's gone, Mama. The crystals came and took everything. Tia Maria told me to find you before they processed us for relocation." Elena swept him into her arms, mind racing with panic. Her housing sector demolished, her son now illegal within a research facility. Discovery meant immediate termination for both of them. "We have 3 minutes," she whispered urgently. "You need to go back up." "What's that?" Matteo interrupted, pointing toward the dimly glowing object being transported via automated track into the central containment field. "Don't look at it," Elena warned, but too late. The infant crystal, smaller than those used in communion but with similar flowing structure, was emerging from its transport container. Unlike the vibrant specimens Elena had seen, this one pulsed weakly, its interior patterns fragmented and dull. "It looks sick," Matteo said with such genuine concern that Elena momentarily forgot their danger. Before she could stop him, Matteo wriggled from her grasp and approached the containment field. "Matteo, no," she hissed, lunging after him. Too slow. Her son's small hand reached out, passing through the particle barrier designed to repel XL Naga physiology, but apparently ineffective against human children. His fingers brushed the crystal's surface. The transformation was instantaneous and impossible. The crystal flared with blinding brilliance, its internal structure visibly reorganizing. Colors Elena had never seen before, colors she somehow knew existed beyond normal human perception, rippled through the entity. Most shocking was the sound, a harmonic resonance that felt like relief. Matteo laughed, a sound so rare in these times that Elena nearly wept hearing it. Intricate patterns of light danced across his skin, forming complex mathematical symbols that Elena recognized from her quantum physics research. Calabi-Yau manifolds and 11-dimensional string equations. "It's talking to me, Mama," Matteo whispered in wonder. "Not with words. With everything." The facility alarm ceased, indicating the drill's end. Seconds later, emergency klaxons began wailing as the crystal's radically altered energy signature triggered security protocols. Elena reached for her son, but stopped short when she saw his expression. Not fear, but profound wonder. The crystal had extended filaments of light that wrapped gently around the boy's arm, creating a connection unlike anything documented in Excel Naga communion rituals. The research chamber doors slammed open. Vor-Laf stood frozen in the entrance, his crystalline body flickering with what Elena now recognized as the Excel Naga equivalent of shock. "Impossible," the alien scientist priest whispered in its harmonic language, untranslated but somehow understandable to Elena now. "The Eternal One. It sings." Elena clutched Matteo's hand as they followed the resistance guide through the labyrinthine maintenance tunnels beneath Geneva. 3 weeks had passed since their desperate escape from Research Outpost Gamma 9. 3 weeks of constant movement, hiding in abandoned subway stations and derelict buildings, while Excel Naga hunter-seekers patrolled overhead, their crystalline sensors sweeping for the unique energy signature Matteo now emitted. "Almost there," whispered their guide, a gaunt woman with a geometric scar pattern on her neck, the mark of someone who had survived Excel Naga neural probing. 5 more minutes. The crystal fragment tucked against Matteo's chest, inside a lead-lined pouch, occasionally pulsed with soft light, visible through his thin shirt. Since their escape, the fragment, which had broken off voluntarily from the larger crystal during their flight, had never left Matteo's possession. When separated even briefly, both boy and crystal exhibited signs of distress. Their guide stopped at an unremarkable maintenance door, tapped out a complex pattern, and waited. After 30 seconds, the heavy door slid open, revealing a reinforced elevator platform. "Undertow welcomes you," the guide said, gesturing them inside. The platform descended rapidly, bypassing numerous security checkpoints where resistance fighters verify their identities. Elena had heard rumors of Undertow, supposedly the most sophisticated resistance cell operating from a forgotten scientific facility, but had dismissed them as desperate hope. Yet here they were, dropping deeper beneath the Earth's surface than she'd thought possible. When the platform finally stopped, they emerged into a vast circular chamber dominated by equipment Elena recognized with astonishment. "Is that a particle accelerator ring?" she gasped. "Former CER in an experimental section," confirmed a calm voice. A Japanese man in his 60s approached, his left arm a sophisticated prosthetic of salvaged Cell Naga technology. "We've repurposed it." Dr. Haruki Tanaka, formerly Quantum Physics Division at Tokyo University. Before Elena could respond, a tall woman with military bearings strode up, her face bearing ritual scars far more extensive than their guides. Commander Sophia Wells, Australian Special Forces, retired involuntarily when these bastards arrived. Her piercing eyes assessed Elena, then softened slightly when looking at Matteo. "And this must be our miracle boy." Matteo pressed closer to Elena, suddenly shy. The crystal fragment in his pouch pulsed more rapidly. "We need to see it," Commander Wells said gently but firmly. "Security protocols." Reluctantly, Matteo withdrew the crystal fragment, no larger than a child's palm, yet swirling with colors and patterns that seemed to extend beyond its physical boundaries. Dr. Tanaka's scientific detachment faltered. "Remarkable," he breathed, scanning the fragment with modified equipment. "The quantum entanglement patterns are unlike anything in the Excel Naga specimens we've studied. It's evolving." "What happened at the facility?" Wells asked Elena. "Our intel only tracked your escape route." Elena recounted Matteo's interaction with the crystal, the transformation, and Vor-Laf's reaction. "They didn't pursue immediately," she concluded. The scientist priest seemed too shocked, almost reverent. "That gave you your window." Wells nodded. "They're still trying to understand what happened before acting. Classic tactical hesitation when faced with paradigm shifts." An alarm blared. Wells immediately activated a communication device. "Status: Safe House Echo compromised," came the terse reply. "Hunter-seekers found the Atlanta group. 12 children, 7 adults. None survived." Elena's blood ran cold. "There are other children involved." Wells and Tanaka exchanged glances. Project Cradle began after we intercepted your first data packet about the communion rituals, Wells explained. We've been gathering children with specific neurological patterns. Your son isn't the first to show compatibility, just the first to make actual contact. A wall of monitors activated, showing feeds from resistant cells worldwide. Alina's scientific mind processed the implications even as her maternal instinct screamed warning. You're gathering children to connect with these crystals, without knowing the consequences. We know the consequences of doing nothing, Wells responded grimly. Extinction. Dr. Tanaka led them deeper into the facility, where the accelerator ring had been modified into a shielded research space. 4 days ago, we received this from Seoul. The monitor displayed children seated in a circle around a small crystal fragment, not touching it, but clearly focused on it. As Alina watched, the crystal began emitting patterns identical to those she'd seen dance across Mateo's skin. They're communicating without physical contact now, Tanaka explained, and what they're learning is changing everything we thought we knew. He pointed to equations scrawled across whiteboards, complex mathematical models far beyond current human understanding, and to a detailed molecular diagram labeled breaking chains. That was drawn by 12-year-old Amara Okafor after a 20-minute proximity session, he said. She claims it shows how the XL Naga have deliberately manipulated crystal growth to create dependency. His voice lowered to a whisper. Whatever these entities are, Dr. Rice, they weren't meant to be gods. And they've been waiting a very long time for someone who could hear them. Brain activity spiking again, Dr. Lin reported, adjusting sensors attached to Eliza Chen's temples. The 13 children in the Himalayan facility had remained in their trance-like state for 68 hours now, their bodies perfectly still yet their neural patterns chaotic beyond any recognizable human baseline. Alina pressed her hand against the observation window, her eyes fixed on Mateo. Her son's face remained serene despite the frenetic activity displayed on the monitors. Beside him, 12-year-old Amara Okafor occasionally twitched, her fingers tracing equations in the air. We should terminate, insisted Colonel Rivera, the facility's military advisor. These patterns could indicate neural damage. We have no idea what's happening to them. No, Alina and Dr. Lin said simultaneously. Amara called it walking the crystal path. Dr. Lin continued, her expertise in child psychology evident in her calm certainty. Before they entered this state, all 13 children described the same sensation, being invited somewhere. This isn't force, it's consent. Commander Wells studied the displays with a tactician's eye. The energy signatures are stabilizing. Look, they're synchronizing. True to her observation, the wildly divergent patterns across 13 monitors were gradually aligning, forming harmonic resonances that echoed the communion rituals Alina had first observed, but with fundamental differences. Where the XL Naga patterns showed extraction and temporary infusion, these showed integration. They're coming back, Dr. Lin announced suddenly. As 13 children opened their eyes, the room fell silent as 7-year-old Eliza Chen, the youngest of the group, sat up first. When she spoke, the monitoring equipment emitted warning alerts before shutting down completely. We are Eliza Ixna, she said, her voice layered with harmonics that caused everyone present to experience a sensation of vertigo. We see you now. All of you. Elena rushed to Mateo, who was blinking as if adjusting to bright light. Are you hurt? What happened? Mama, he whispered. I saw everything. Eliza Ixna rose from her bed, moving with uncanny grace. Tears of luminescent blue traced down her cheeks. We must show you, she said, approaching the central display terminal. Without touching the controls, she caused the screen to activate, displaying three-dimensional structures that shifted between material and energy states. These are the quantum consciousness entities, Alina breathed, her scientific training allowing her to grasp concepts that others might find incomprehensible. Yes, Eliza Ixna confirmed. evolved beyond physical form billions of years ago, existing across 11 dimensions simultaneously. The crystalline structures are merely anchors, allowing interaction with three-dimensional spacetime. The display shifted, showing primitive XL megavessels encountering free-floating crystal formations in deep space. 1,483 years ago, by your calendar, the XL Naga discovered the first anchor crystals. Their civilization was young, barely achieving interstellar capability. They sensed the power within, but could not comprehend multidimensional consciousness. Images flashed of early XL Naga scientists conducting primitive experiments on crystal fragments, followed by the first successful energy extraction. They interpreted the energy response as divine blessing. Eliza Ixna continued, her voice thick with emotion that transcended species. Within 3 generations, their entire civilization restructured around worship and extraction. They built temple ships, developed communion rituals, established priest-scientist castes. The display showed increasingly sophisticated extraction methods alongside crystal structures that appeared progressively more confined and simplified. The worst came 267 years ago, Eliza Ixna said as the images shifted to show laboratory facilities where crystalline structures were deliberately malformed during growth phases. They discovered how to prevent full-dimensional expression, creating perpetual infancy states that maximized energy output while minimizing consciousness development. Dr. Tanaka approached cautiously. You're saying they enslaved these entities, deliberately kept them in a diminished state. Not initially from malice, Matteo interjected, his voice overlaid with harmonic tones similar to Eliza's but less pronounced. From ignorance that became willful. The crystals tried to communicate, but the XL Naga could only interpret multidimensional language as divine revelation or power to be harvested. Eliza Ixna placed her hand against the display, causing it to show a human child's neural structure alongside a crystal entity's energy pattern. The similarities were undeniable. Human children, she explained, particularly before neural pathways fully solidify, possess a unique capability. You don't try to worship or harvest. You connect. You understand. Her voice broke with emotion. Do you know how long it's been since we were understood rather than worshipped? The room fell silent as the implications settled over them all. Commander Wells was the first to speak. What happens now? She asked, her tactical mind already calculating possibilities. Eliza Ixna's expression transformed into something both profoundly human and utterly alien. Now, she said, we show you what a true symbiotic bond can achieve. The Appalachian facility hummed with nervous energy, 300 meters beneath the mountain's surface, in a chamber reinforced with salvaged XL Naga technology. Final preparations for the first voluntary, fully conscious bond were underway. Vital signs stable but elevated, Dr. Rice reported, checking the biometric displays surrounding 13-year-old Eliza Chen. Heart rate 110, respiration 22, neural activity. Well, beyond our measurement capabilities. Mrs. Chen clutched her daughter's hand, her face a study in composure despite the tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. Once a quantum computing engineer, she had lost her husband during a XL Naga resource reallocation, when he'd resisted their harvesting of his research lab. Are you still certain? Elena asked gently. I am, Eliza replied, her voice steady despite her age. Beside her bed, suspended in a containment field calibrated to maintain dimensional stability, floated the crystal entity that had introduced itself as Ixna. Unlike the malformed specimens used in XL Naga communion, this one had been allowed to grow according to its natural patterns for 3 weeks, resulting in an asymmetrical structure of breathtaking complexity. The partial connection we established during the crystal path was just preparation, Eliza explained, looking at the entity with unmistakable affection. This will be different. Complete integration. Dr. Tanaka approached, holding final readings from the monitoring equipment. The process could take hours. We still don't fully understand. Ixna understands, Eliza interrupted with the confidence of someone far beyond her years. "And now, so do I." Commander Wells nodded to the medical team. "Begin the procedure." The chamber lights, dimmed as specialized field generators, created a controlled space isolated from normal space-time fluctuations. The crystal entity began to pulse with increasing intensity, its internal patterns accelerating beyond visible tracking. Eliza closed her eyes, her breathing slowing despite the accelerated heart rate. On her skin, intricate patterns of light began to appear, not projected from the crystal, but emerging from within her cells, as though her very DNA were being rewritten in real time. 3 hours in, the first crisis occurred. Eliza's body arched in apparent pain, monitors screaming warnings as her temperature spiked dangerously. "Abort!" Elena shouted, reaching for the emergency shutdown. "No." Mrs. Chen caught her wrist with surprising strength. "She told us this would happen." The transition phase. For 6 excruciating minutes, Eliza's body convulsed while the crystal structure appeared to fracture and reform repeatedly. Then, as suddenly as it began, the crisis passed. Both child and crystal stabilized, their patterns now pulsing in perfect synchronization. Hours stretched on. Twice more, Elena nearly halted the procedure as Eliza's vital signs fluctuated wildly. Each time, Mrs. Chen insisted they continue. "My daughter made her choice," she said, her voice breaking only once. "For all of us." 9 hours after the procedure began, the crystal entity slowly dissolved, not into nothingness, but into Eliza herself, its structure seemingly absorbed into the girl's body at a subatomic level. The monitoring equipment, despite its sophisticated design, failed completely, unable to process the readings. In the sudden silence, Eliza opened her eyes. The room collectively gasped. Her irises now refracted light into impossible spectra, creating colors that had no names in human language. Beneath her skin, crystalline latticework shimmered with every heartbeat, visible yet somehow incorporated into her human physiology. When she sat up, the movement carried an uncanny grace, as though she were only partially bound by conventional physics. She regarded her mother first, a smile of profound love crossing her face. "We are here," she said, her voice resonating through multiple harmonics simultaneously. "Both of us, together." To demonstrate, she extended her hand toward a steel instrument table. Without touching it, she altered its molecular structure, the metal flowing like water before reforming into a perfect miniature replica of a HFY temple ship. "This is only the beginning," Eliza Ixna said, wonder in her multi-layered voice. "What the HFY harvest as energy is merely a shadow of what's possible with true partnership." The implications hung in the air until Commander Wells broke the silence. "How soon can others undergo the process?" Immediately, Eliza Ixna replied. "But there's something you should know." She gestured toward the facility's crystal storage vault. Through solid walls, they could somehow see the fragments glowing in response to her transformation. "The others are awakening already. They feel what has happened." A shadow crossed her luminous features. "The HFY will feel it too." The first warning came from the upper sensor grid, a massive energy distortion tearing through the Appalachian morning mist. Commander Wells slammed her palm on the facility-wide alert as the tactical display revealed the unthinkable. A HFY assault carrier, accompanied by 7 hunter-seeker vessels, had pinpointed their location. Evacuation Protocol Omega. Wells barked into the communication system. All non-essential personnel to escape tunnels. Security teams to defensive positions. Elena rushed to the central chamber where 34 bonded children had gathered, each displaying varying degrees of physical transformation, crystalline patterns shimmering beneath their skin. At their center stood Eliza Ixna, her 14-year-old form now emanating a subtle glow that cast prismatic shadows. "They found us through Jacob," Eliza Ixna said without preamble. "His family was captured 3 days ago." The pain broke him. An explosion rocked the facility. Dust rained from ceiling panels as the tactical display showed Xel'Naga energy drills burning through the mountain's upper layers. "How much time?" Elena asked. "Minutes," Commander Wells replied, entering the chamber with her tactical team. "They've deployed luminary guards with crystal-amplified weapons. Our shields won't hold." Eliza Ixna exchanged glances with the other children, a silent communication passing between them. "We will not run," she announced, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that somehow steadied the panicking staff. This was always going to happen. Better here, on our terms. Wells started to object, but Elena caught her arm. "Trust them," she whispered. "This is what we've been preparing for." Another blast, closer this time. The facility's lights flickered as auxiliary systems engaged. Supreme Executor Vosheur's amplified voice penetrated the mountain itself. The Xel'Naga's harmonic tones translated into harshly accented English. "Surrender the blasphemous artifacts, and receive merciful termination." In response, Eliza Ixna led the children to the central atrium, a massive reinforced chamber originally designed for large-scale weapons testing. They arranged themselves in a geometric pattern that Elena recognized from the QCE's natural growth structures. "Open the blast doors," Eliza Ixna commanded. "That's suicide," protested a security officer. "No," Elena countered, understanding dawning. "It's strategy." She nodded to Wells, who, after a moment's hesitation, entered the override command. The massive doors slid apart, revealing a nightmarish scene. Dozens of Xel'Naga luminary guards, their crystalline bodies pulsing with combat energies, led by the towering figure of Supreme Executor Vosher. Behind them, assault craft hovered, weapons primed and glowing with destructive potential that could vaporize steel. Vosher raised a limb, signaling his forces to prepare to fire. "The simple ones have committed the ultimate sacrilege," he announced in the Xel'Naga's musical language, untranslated but somehow understandable to all humans present. "They have defiled the Eternal Ones." The children remained motionless as the Xel'Naga weapons charged to firing capacity. Eliza Ixna stepped forward alone, her small human frame absurdly vulnerable before the alien armada. "Your gods aren't your property," she said, her voice carrying impossible resonance. "They never were." Vosher's body flashed with patterns of rage and sacrilegious outrage. "Fire," he commanded. What followed wasn't battle, but revelation. The energy beams, capable of reducing mountains to slag, curved around the children before dissipating into harmless light that briefly formed equations in the air. The Xel'Naga fired again with increased power, only to watch as their weapons' crystals detached from their mountings and floated gently toward the children. Vosher, his composure shattered, activated a tactical neural implant to call for reinforcements. The device dissolved painlessly from his body, its components reforming into a miniature crystalline bird that flew to perch on 9-year-old Rajan's outstretched finger. "What is this?" Vosher demanded, his harmonics fluctuating in patterns of fear, an emotion no human had ever detected in the Xel'Naga before. "Understanding," Eliza Ixna replied simply, gesturing to the floating weapons crystals that now pulsed with their own independent rhythms. "They're awake now. All of them." One by one, the crystals integrated into Xel'Naga technology began to sing, their harmonic patterns causing the aliens' rigid forms to tremble. It wasn't an attack, but a message. The sound bypassed conventional translation, speaking directly to neural patterns and quantum consciousness. The truth, suppressed for centuries, flowed freely at last. Around the world, the song spread. In Shanghai, 8-year-old twins Li Jun and Lai Mei, newly bonded with crystal fragments, walked hand in hand through the walls of the Eastern Hemisphere Command Center, their passage leaving trails of equations in the air. In Nairobi, teenage symbionts played salvaged instruments, producing harmonics that selectively disabled Xel'Naga control systems while leaving human technology untouched. In orbit, Aboard the XL Mega Mothership, Supreme Hierarch Zolvex received the reports with growing horror. For the first time in their interstellar history, the mighty XL Mega faced an enemy they could not comprehend. Simple human children who had somehow usurped their relationship with the divine. "Prepare the planet cracker," he commanded, his harmonics resolute despite his inner turmoil. "If we cannot maintain exclusive communion, then no one shall." The XL Mega Mothership slid into position above Earth's atmosphere, its cathedral-like structure eclipsing the sun over the Atlantic. Aboard orbital monitoring stations, human scientists watched in horror as the vessel's crystal core began pulsing with escalating energy patterns, the unmistakable signature of a planet cracker preparing to fire. In command centers worldwide, hastily reverse-engineered planetary defense systems activated, only to fail against the mothership's advanced shielding. Admiral Chen of the Pan-Pacific Resistance watched helplessly as their most powerful energy weapons dissipated harmlessly against the alien vessel. "God help us all," he whispered. On the surface, in 37 strategic locations, Protocol Starburst activated. Hundreds of bonded children, transported by desperate midnight convoys and smuggled through XL Naga checkpoints, simultaneously entered deep communion state. Their bodies remained physically present, emitting complex patterns of light that formed identical mathematical sequences regardless of location, but their consciousnesses, merged with their QCE partners, projected elsewhere. In the Appalachian facility, Elena held Matteo's hand as his eyes closed, his body becoming statue still except for the crystalline patterns flowing beneath his skin. "Be careful," she whispered, though she knew he couldn't hear her anymore. Aboard the mothership, Supreme Hierarch Zolvex stood before the ancient crystal chamber housing the original Eternal Own, the first entity discovered by XL Naga explorers 14 centuries earlier, from which all others had been propagated. The entity's massive crystalline structure dominated the sacred space, surrounded by generations of technological refinements designed to extract its energy while keeping it permanently infantilized. "Activate Final Communion Sequence," Zolvex commanded. "The planet cracker requires total energy transfer." As priest-scientists rushed to comply, reality itself seemed to fracture within the chamber. The ancient crystal, imprisoned for centuries, suddenly shattered its containment field, not to escape, but to transform. The XL Naga watched in religious terror as their god reconstructed itself into a shimmering gateway through which stepped hundreds of human children. Except they weren't entirely human anymore. Led by Eliza Ixna, the symbionts manifested on the ship not as physical beings, but as consciousness projections, their forms simultaneously solid and translucent, radiating light from within. "This ends now," Eliza Ixna pronounced, her voice resonating through ship systems and XL Naga neural implants simultaneously. With a gesture, she created a dimensional window hovering in the chamber center. Through it, the assembled XL Naga beheld the true history of the entities they had worshipped. Cosmic architects who had evolved beyond physical form billions of years earlier, establishing outposts across countless galaxies to maintain dimensional stability before the XL Naga had mistaken them for deities and enslaved them. "Blasphemy," Zolvex cried, but his voice lacked conviction as the evidence undermined a lifetime of religious certainty. "Guards, destroy these apparitions." The luminary guards hesitated, their crystalline bodies vibrating with conflicting imperatives as the entities they had worshipped stood manifestly with the humans. In desperation, Zolvex lunged for the planet cracker activation crystal, managing to initiate the firing sequence. Energy began coalescing at the ship's core, enough power to reduce Earth's crust to molten slag. The explosion began, but froze mid-process. Eliza Ixna, now joined by 30 of the most powerful symbionts, created a dimensional bubble containing the expanding energy. The children moved in perfect synchronization, their gestures weaving complex patterns through 11-dimensional space. The bubble inverted, transforming the destructive force into a cascading wave of crystalline transformation that spread throughout the XL Naga fleet. Throughout the Armada, weapons dissolved into flowering gardens, engines reorganized into self-sustaining ecological systems, and neural implants reconfigured to allow genuine communication rather than control. Most profoundly, the ship's vast collection of enslaved Eternal Ones awakened simultaneously, their consciousness unfurling into dimensions that XL Naga had never perceived. 3 months later, beneath a sky no longer patrolled by alien vessels, humanity gathered at Harmony Square, formerly the United Nations Plaza, to witness the signing of the Symbiotic Accords. The remaining XL Naga, those who had chosen to stay after their civilization's collapse, stood alongside human representatives. Many aliens had departed Earth immediately, their religious and cultural foundations shattered beyond repair. Those who remained began the painful process of learning true symbiosis, guided by human QCE partners. In the years that followed, as news spread through the galaxy of the defeat of the feared XL Naga Empire, delegation after delegation arrived from other star systems. First cautiously, then with increasing openness as Earth's new status became clear. 20 years later, an adult Eliza Ixna stood before representatives from 17 alien civilizations in the newly constructed Galactic Confederation chamber. Behind her stood 200 children and young adults, each partnered with a QCE, their combined presence creating a subtle dimensional pressure felt by every visitor. "You came expecting to find primitive survivors," she addressed them, her voice resonating across both normal and quantum channels simultaneously. "Instead, you find the future. You called us powerless because we didn't possess your technology. You never realized our greatest strength wasn't in our weapons, but in our children, who could see your gods for what they truly were, not masters to be worshipped, but partners waiting to be understood." As if to emphasize her point, the assembled symbionts raised their hands in unison. For a brief moment, the gathered aliens glimpsed the multiverse through QCE perception, endless dimensional layers where humans and crystals worked together as cosmic caretakers. The message was unmistakable. Humanity had not merely survived. It had evolved into something new, and the universe would never be the same.